Hello. Hey, everyone. Hey, Benjamin. How's it going? What's up, Wing Chun? You guys are so early. What's up, Losh? How's it going? Hey, Hope. I'm glad you're here. What's up, Bigfoot? Wait, Hope. Chocolate cake, vanilla cake, or carrot cake? Chocolate cake. What's up, Sunnyside? How's it going? Hey, Nikki. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Sal. How late is it for you right now? What's up, Casey? How's it going? Dum dum dum. Beck C10 101 EFI. Did I see the eclipse? I saw pictures and videos of the eclipse. I don't live in a place where the eclipse happened, unfortunately. What about you guys? Who caught the eclipse? I've been told that it's a magical feeling. Everyone was making blind jokes. Okay. You plan to see the next one. Wait, when is the next one? I know the next one in North America is going to be really long. Far off in the future. But when is the next eclipse? I believe in the world, if you take the entirety of the world, eclipse, like solar eclipses, happen pretty often. 2044 in my country. Oh, gotcha. Wait, later this year, summer. Wait, is there another eclipse? Hold on. Next eclipse, solar eclipse. Wait, no. It says a total solar eclipse won't be visible again from the contiguous US until 2044. Yeah, it's gonna be a while. What about next solar eclipse in the world? When is that? April 8th. Oh, thanks, Google. I mean the next one. Next solar eclipse in the world will be 2026 over Spain, Iceland, and Greenland. Okay. Yeah, maybe catch the next one. You know what? You know what? A cool fact that I know about the solar eclipse. We're super lucky that we can see a total solar eclipse because so right now the moon is the exact size of the sun, right? So it can if it can cover it, and then you can see that what do you call it? The corona around the moon. Yeah, actually, we're pretty lucky that we can do that. We can see that because the moon is moving further and further away from the Earth. Okay, gradually. Okay, it's gonna take a few million years for it to like just fly away. Yeah, but it's moving farther and farther away. So we happen to live in a time where, from our vantage point, the moon is at the same size as the sun. So you can see it cover the sun, and you can see the nice corona around it. Yeah, but if we lived in another time, maybe I don't know, a few million years ago, that wouldn't happen. So consider ourselves lucky that we can have these pictures. What happens when the moon goes away? Let me see. Let me look it up. When will the moon escape Earth's gravity? Okay, here it says the moon cannot escape Earth's gravity. Okay, but when will it be like really far away? The moon is moving away from the Earth about 1.49 inches per year. Okay, so someone do the math. Will it bounce back again? No, I think it just keeps moving further and further away. I think it'll still orbit the Earth until the sun, expands and just engulfs the entire Earth and Moon system. But yeah, the moon slowly moves further and further away. All right. Let's do this. Hold on. Oh shit, wait, let me turn off my VPN. Oh wait, it's already off. Never mind. All right. Wait, is it going to be an eclipse themed Wordle? I don't think so. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. E. Maybe there are two E's. R-E-E-E. Ooh. Freedom. Free. Green. Green. Okay. Okay. Not a G. Bree? Breen? Brief? That is not a word. Breed. Ah! So easy. Stop. All right. Cemental. All right, guys. We can do this. Let's do this in 5 minutes or less. Brief. Eclipse. Small. Short. Long. Tiny. Low. Quick. Fast. Short. King. Stout. Short. Tall. Hot. Cold. Minute. Moment. A short. Haste. Cartoon. Short. Tiny. Brief. Moment. Instant. No. Era. No. Short. Short pants. Short shorts. Book. Brief, fast, short. Clothing. Like pants. Nope. Year. Year! Leap. Month. Day. Century. Generation. Annual. Time. Span. Week. Oh my god. Weekend. Hour. Day. Wait, did that. Minute. Wait, did that. Second. Seconds. That's not a word. Age. Millisecond. Nope. Instant. We tried that. Period. Now. Oh, present. Second. First. Oh, wait. First. One. Third. Zero. This. That. Now. Here. Wait, first? Prime. Winner. Alpha. Start. Beginning. Begin. Two. Primary. First. Initial. Last. Oh my god. We're so good. Now, first is so much closer to last. Good job, guys. Good job. Nicely done. Congratulations. 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Not bad. Although we already broke the record. Like 0 seconds. Oh, good job, guys. All right. I have something today to drink. Whoa. I don't know why it's called cow piss. I'm not sure. Doesn't sound that appetizing. It says it's a carbonated beverage, okay? A refreshing blend of sweet and tangy made with cultured milk. Okay. Okay. We'll see. Yeah. Want some cow piss? Oh, did you hear that? Listen. It's fizzling. Do you hear it? Oh, it's not bad. I happen to like cow piss. It's not milky at all. It's kind of citrusy, actually. It's not bad. I don't drink soda, but it's not bad. It's gonna have to be like an 8 out of 10. Yeah. Yeah, I do like these tiny cans because I can't drink so much of these sodas. There's just enough soda. Not bad. Squishiness rating 0. All right, guys. Alright, you ready? What happened last week? Alright. So last week, remember that Taoist Chu Chi? He meets with the 7 freaks of the south, plus this monk named Jiao Mu. Okay. And he accuses Jiao Mu of hiding the wives of his 2 friends. Now when Yan Honglia is there at the restaurant, he's there watching. Okay, no one knew who he was. And anyways, they have a drinking contest. Okay, so Chu Chi he gets the upper hand because he's like squirting out the wine through his feet. The scholar Zhu Tong he sees this and he does his own trick. Instead of drinking the wine, he secretly pours it into a bucket. Okay, but through some clever magician's trick, no one can see it. Chu Chi he admits defeat, but he's still determined to rescue the wives of his friend. So later, Chu Chi barges into the temple of the monk and attacks everyone. And now the 7 freaks and the monk, they're forced to fight. What they don't realize is that 2 people did enter the temple, but they were not. They were Li Ping, which is the wife of Guo Xiaotian. But the second person is Duan Tiandu, that officer in the military who killed Guo Xiaotian. So yeah, he killed this guy. He kills this guy, and he steals his wife. So so he was hiding in the temple with her and hiding from the Taoist Chu Chi. Anyway, so the fight ends, and after the fight, everyone is like almost dead. Just goes to show that communication is important, guys. Afterwards, Duan Tiandu shows himself with Li Ping next to him, and the 7 freaks are like, "Wait, no way! Wait, you have a woman? And you do have a woman in your temple?" The monk is like, "No, I don't. I've been tricked." And he charges at Duan Tiandu. Duan Tiandu steps out of the way, and the monk drives his head right into a column, and he dies. Just randomly. And then Duan Tiandu, he takes the girl, Li Ping, and he runs away. And there we go. How's that? I have a Calpis sponsorship. I don't. No, I don't. You gotta believe me. All right. I think at some point during the stream, a burp is coming. Turn my camera a little to the right, not in the shot. Okay. Thank you, producer Nikki. All right. Y'all ready? Y'all ready for this? Time it for when a character burps. Gotcha. All right. Chapter 3, Part 1. The monks were crying because of the venerable monk Jiaomu's death, but some of them were still able to take care of the wounded by bandaging up their wounds and carrying them into the guest rooms. Suddenly, there came an incessant banging from the vat underneath the huge bell. Not knowing what kind of monster was present, the monks looked at each other with blank faces. not knowing what to do, started to chant the Sutra of the High King. But the banging continued through all of the chants of the help the sufferers. Wait, all the chants of no chapter name? I don't think so. Maybe this is the name? Boundless desert. I think that is the name. Okay. But the banging continued through all the chants of help the sufferers and Amida Buddha. Finally, a dozen or so of the more courageous monks pulled the huge bell back up again with a huge, thick rope. As soon as they lifted the vat, a huge ball of meat came rolling out from underneath. Scared beyond words, the monks scattered. That ball of meat suddenly stood up. It turned out to be Han Baoju. Being covered for the last half the fight, he had no idea what had happened. Looking around, he noticed Monk Jiaomu had died, and all his sworn brothers were greatly injured and almost panicked. He walked over to Chu Ji and was about to strike down at his head with his golden dragon whip. Third brother, no! Chen Qinfa shouted. Why not? Han Baoju demanded in anger. You just can't, was all Chen Qinfa could get out because of the pain in his abdomen. Even though both of his legs were wounded, Kujanu's mind was still working fine. He took out the antidote for his poison and instructed the monks to give the right amounts to both Chu Chuchi and Han Xiaoying, all the while explaining what had happened to Han Baoju. Enraged, Han Baoju was about to go chasing after Duan Tiandu when Kujanu shouted, We'll find that bastard sooner or later. First, help those of your brothers who suffered internal injuries. Both Zhu Tong and Nan Xiren had suffered severe internal injuries, and that kick to Chen Jinfa's stomach was quite a blow, too. Zhang Asheng's collarbone was broken, and his chest was hit as well, knocking him out temporarily. Once he woke up, it turned out he wasn't in any mortal danger. He immediately began helping others in the temple. The monks of the Fahua Monastery sent a couple of errand runners to report the events to Abbot Kumu at the Yunlo Monastery, and also began to make funeral arrangements for the monk Jiaomu. After several days, the poison in Chu Chuchi and Han Xiaoying's body was eradicated. Being the medical expert that he was, Chu Chuchi immediately began combining herbs and treating Chu Tong and others, as well as massaging and snapping bones back into place. Luckily, everyone's kung fu base was strong enough that their internal as well as the external injuries were not serious. After several more days, everyone was able to sit up again. One day, all 8 of them gathered in one of the monks' rooms and reflected on how they were manipulated into fighting each other. Yeah, you mean they started talking? Actually communicating? Resulting in the death of the monk Jiaomu and injuries to all parties. All of them were silent, not knowing what to say. After a while, Han Xiaoying finally broke the silence. Everyone knows about Priest Chu's intelligence and wit, and the 7 of us didn't exactly begin wandering the world yesterday, yet we were all manipulated into this by some little nobody. If this ever gets out, everyone in the martial world will laugh at us. Reverend, do you have any idea as to how to clean up this mess? Chu Chuchi had been blaming himself for the last couple of days, thinking that if only he had sat down and calmly talked with the monk Jiaomu, then all of this could have been avoided. Yeah, you think? So, in deference, he turned to Kujanu. Big brother Ku, what do you say? Kujanu's temper was bad to begin with. After his eyes were blinded, it got even worse. The fact that Chu Chuchi himself brought down all 7 of them combined was, in fact, what he considered to be one of the biggest embarrassments of his life. coupled with the fact that the pain in his legs from the sword wound was still throbbing. He was barely able to hold back his indignation. He sneered and replied, Priest Chu uses his sword skills to take down anyone in his way, and never needs to respect anyone. Why consult us over this matter? Chu Chu Chi was taken aback for a moment, but immediately realized that he was still angry about the matter. He stood up, cupped his fist, and bowed to the 7 freaks. I was wrong in my actions. I was too rude and headstrong. This entire matter is entirely my fault, and I ask you all for your forgiveness. Zhu Tong and the rest of the freaks returned the gesture. Ku Zhene pretended not to notice and coldly replied, I say the 7 of us have lost all of our rights to meddle in the affairs of the martial world. We should settle down here, fishing, chopping wood, or whatever. As long as Priest Chu does not come around again, we would at least be able to spend the rest of our lives in peace. He mad. Chu Chu Chi blushed a little from that verbal slash. After a brief pause, he suddenly stood up and said, Since I was at fault this time, I will never dare step into this area again. As for retribution for Monk Jiaomu's death, it will all fall on my shoulders, and I will kill that bastard with my own hands and avenge him. Having said that, I need to say it's now time for me to leave. Chu Chu Chi bowed towards everyone again and began to walk out. Stop! Ku Zhene shouted. Chu Chu Chi turned around and said, Does Big Brother Ku have something else to say? Now he's Big Brother Ku, eh? You have injured all of us, Ku Zhene replied. And you expect all of this to just disappear because you said a couple of words? Then what does Big Brother Ku want? As long as it is within my abilities, I will try my best to do it. We just can't let this slide right now, Ku Zhene answered. So it would be nice if Reverend gives us something more. Although the 7 freaks were all very righteous and moral individuals, they were also very proud and acted very strangely, making them well deserving of the title of 7 freaks. Each was a master of kung fu, and they always worked together, so they had never come out on the short end of a struggle when going up against others in the martial world. Several years ago, they got into a fight with the Huaiyang clan. The 7 of them killed over 100 or so of the clan members on the shores of the Yangtze. Back then, Han Xiaoying was still a child, but she still managed to kill 2 foes. The name 7 Freaks of the South became famous throughout the martial world. Defeat by the hands of Chu Chu Chi did not go down very well with any of them. Add that to the fact that the monk Jiaomu, good friend of the freaks, died. One could argue because of Chu Chu Chi's rashness. But there was still the fact that a woman was hidden inside the temple, and she was the widow of Guo Xiaotian, as Chu Chu Chi had claimed. This made the freaks partly to blame. However, at this moment, the freaks had forgotten about that. I was hit by your projectile, Chu Chu Chi replied, and if it wasn't for Big Brother Ku's antidote, I would have been dead a long time ago. So, for this fight, I wholeheartedly admit defeat. If that's the case, Ku Zhene replied, then leave that sword that you carry on your back, and you can go. He knew that if the 2 sides fought again at this time, only the Han siblings would be able to put up a fight, and that victory for his side was impossible. But all of the freaks would rather die than to let the matter pass like this. This angered Chu Chu Chi greatly. I have already given you people a lot of face, and that should be enough. I also admitted defeat. What else do you want? The sword is for my protection, he continued. just like that staff Big Brother Ku carries around. Are you poking fun at my blindness? Lol. Kujanu shouted back, I dare not. We are all injured right now, so it's hard to actually fight at this moment, Kujanu shouted angrily. So I invite Priest Chu to come and duel with the 7 of us a year from today at the Pavilion of the Drunken Immortal. Chu Chu Chi frowned at that remark. He thought, because the 7 freaks weren't bad people, there was really no point in keeping this grudge going between us. The day after the venerable Jiao Mu died, Han Baozhu could have killed me easily once he got out from underneath the bell. Besides, this whole matter was caused more or less by my own rashness. A real man knows what's right and wrong. If he's wrong, then he should admit it. To sort all this out with the freaks won't be easy either. After thinking silently for a bit, an idea suddenly came to him. If you really want to determine who is better between us, then we could do that, he said, but only according to the rules I lay down. Otherwise, I have already lost to Hero Chu at the Pavilion of the Drunken Immortal, and I lost again fighting here in the temple. I have already lost twice and would inevitably lose the 3rd time as well. There's no point in going any further. Han Baozhu, Han Xiaoying, and Zhang Asheng immediately stood up. The other 4 could not stand up, but all sat up as much as they could. They answered in unison, when the 7 freaks of the South duel with someone, we always let our opponent choose the time, place, and method. Seeing how competitive they were, Chu Chu Chi smiled. So, I decide how we should fight, no matter what. Figuring that no matter what dirty trick Chu Chu Chi could come up with, it wouldn't necessarily mean defeat for them, Zhu Tong and Chen Qinfa answered simultaneously, That's right. A man's word, Chu Chu Chi replied. Wild horses can't bring back, Han Xiaoying finished, but Kujanu remained silent. The saying, a man's word can't be brought back by wild horses, is a famous saying in China about keeping one's word. When a person says it, it means that he will not go back on his word. If you people feel that my way is unfair in any way, Chu Chu Chi continued, then I will admit defeat right here and now. Obviously planning to gain ground by giving up a little, he knew that the freaks would never let him admit defeat easily because of their competitiveness. There's no need to play all these word games to anger us. Just tell us what it is, Kujanu replied as expected. Chu Chu Chi sat down and began to explain. The method I have in my mind might be a little dragged out, but what it really measures is abilities and skills, and is susceptible to some temporary mishaps or conditions. Everyone knows any martial artist can fight with blades and fists. We all have names in the martial world, and absolutely cannot stoop down to the level of lowly underlings. What's left to fight if we can't do it with blades or fists? Are we having a drinking contest again? All of the freaks wondered at that moment. At that comment. This huge contest between us, you 7 against me, will not only measure our kung fu skills, but also our will, determination, and wit. With this contest, we will see once and for all who the real hero is. What is this? Next page. The entire conversation had all of the 7 freaks shaking in anticipation and excitement. Stop stalling! Tell us! Han Xiaoying demanded. The harder it is, the better. If we are competing meditating, making medicine, fortune-telling, or ghost banishing, then we are no match for Priest Chu at all, Chu Tong said with a smile. And I don't really want to compete with second brother Chu in stealing chickens or taking sheep, Chu Chu Chi replied with a smile. This caused a little bit of laughter from Han Xiaoying, who quickly went back to urging Qiu Chuqi on. Come on, say it. At the very bottom of all this, and the misunderstanding that led to our fight, was saving the descendants of a couple of good men. This matter would be best ended in that way as well. Qiu Chuqi went on to tell how he met Guo Xiaotian and Yang Tiexin, all the way to how he pursued Duan Tiande to this temple. Throughout his entire explanation, the freaks could not stop cursing the Jin as well as the Song government for its corruption. After he finished the story, Qiu Chuqi went on. That woman that Duan Tiande dragged away was Guo Xiaotian's widow, Madame Li. Other than Big Brother Ku and the Han siblings, I'm sure the other four of you saw them. I remember her voice, Ku Zhener interrupted. I will never forget that voice. Great, Qiu Chuqi continued. As for young Tiexin's widow, Mrs. Bao, there is no clue as to where she might be. I have seen her before, but you people haven't. So what I propose we do is... The 7 of us would go rescue Mrs. Li, while you go save Mrs. Bao, and that whoever succeeds wins, all right? Han Xiaoying eagerly cut in. Qiu Chuqi smiled and replied, Saving people, while definitely not easy, can't really be used to determine who's a hero and who's not. What I have in mind is much harder and more troublesome. So, what are you suggesting? Ku Zhener demanded. Both of the women are pregnant, Qiu Chuqi explained. After we save them, we must make sure they settle down nicely and allow them to give birth. After that, I will teach the young child, while the 7 of you teach the Guo child. Oh. The 7 freaks were getting more and more amazed with every word that he said. They were practically mesmerized when Han Baoju cut in. Then what? After 18 years, when the kids are both 18, all of us, as well as invited friends from all over the martial realm, shall gather at the pavilion of the drunken immortal once again for a huge feast. Then, when we are all sufficiently full and merry, we'll let the 2 kids duel to see whether it is my disciple who is better, or is the disciple of the 7 heroes really the best? Aha! Smart of him. He gets these guys to save the wife and teach her kid. The 7 freaks stared at each other, completely speechless. Qiu Chuqi continued. If the 7 heroes fight me once more and defeat me, then it could easily be because you outnumber me. Not much glory there. But if I pass all my kung fu to one person, and you guys pass all of your kung fu to one person, then whoever wins must mean that their master or masters were better. Filled with pride, Ku Zhener slammed his iron staff onto the floor. All right, that's what we'll do. What if that bastard Duan Tiande has already killed Mrs. Li? What then? Chen Qinfa asked. That's just the luck of the draw, Qiu Chuqi replied. The heavens wanted me to win. What more could be said? All right, Han Baoju pitched in with his opinion. Rescuing widows and orphans was the right thing to do to begin with. Even if we weren't competing against you, we would still do it. Qiu Chuqi gave him a thumbs up and declared, Third Brother Han is exactly right. If the 7 heroes are willing to care for the Guo child to adulthood, then I would like to thank everyone for my late brother Guo. He bowed to each of them again. This idea of yours is rather cunning, Zhu Cong observed. With those several sentences of yours, we brothers and sisters would have to give up 18 years of our lives. Qiu Chuqi's face changed color a little, and he suddenly let out a loud laugh. What's so funny? Han Xiaoying demanded. I have long heard and admired the name of the 7 freaks of the South, Chu Chuchi replied. Everyone says that the 7 heroes are truly righteous heroes who are always there when you need them. But today I see that the rumors were greatly exaggerated. Now he has them in his palm, guys. This made all of the freaks furious. Han Baoju slammed his fist down onto the bench that he was sitting on and was about to say something when Chu Chuchi cut him off. Since ancient times, for real heroes and men, making a friend was for life in every way, and giving one's life for a friend would be no big thing if loyalty and friendship called for it. Nobody has ever heard of Jing Ku and Nia Zheng haggling about some small thing. The Yang and Guo family are in need of help right now. How could anyone start haggling about it? After that little speech, Zhu Tong's face was flushed with embarrassment. He flicked his fan and replied, The Reverend is right. I realize my mistake now. The 7 of us will take on this matter. Chu Chuchi stood up and said, Today is the 24th of the Today is the 24th of the 3rd month. 18 years from today, at noon, we'll meet again upstairs in the pavilion of the Drunken Immortal. There, in front of all the martial world, we will find out who is the real hero. With a flick of his sleeve, he walked out of the door. Han Baoju shouted, I'm off to look for that Duan Tiandu now. If he's crawled into a tortoise hole and disappeared, or we are going to have to waste a lot of energy. He was the only one among the 7 freaks who wasn't injured, so he charged out of the door, mounted Wind Chaser, his yellow horse, and began to go chase after Duan Tiandu and Li Ping. Third brother! Zhu Tong shouted. You don't know what they look like! But Han Baoju wasn't the patient type, and with Wind Chaser well deserving of his name, he was long gone. Okay. Alright. That was cool. Yeah. So now we're getting into the story, the real story. So they're going to be 2 kids, and they're going to be taught by these, by Chu Chuchi and then the 7 freaks. And we're going to see who's better. That's the story, I think. Alright, guys. 5-minute break. We'll be right back. What? So short. Alright, we're back. Let's see what happens. Do they catch Duan Tiandu? Once he was out of the temple, Duan Tiandu ran as fast as his legs could carry him, all the while dragging Li Ping. Only after he was sure that nobody was chasing after him did he finally stop and take a breath. Then he ran to the bank of the nearest river and jumped on the first boat that he saw. Taking out his saber and putting it up against the neck of the fisherman, he ordered the man to start moving the boat. The rivers and canals south of the Yangtze were as dense as a spider web, and boats were the everyday mode of transportation, as common as horses and carriages were up north. Hence the saying, Northerners ride horses, Southerners ride boats. With Duan Tiandu looking as vicious as he did, as well as being dressed like an official, how could the fisherman dare to disobey? He immediately undocked and guided the boat out of the city. You probably shouldn't have painted both ends of your stick. Now you can't set it down. What are you making there, Lady Koi? What a mess! If I go back to Linen, if nothing else, my uncle will kill me on first sight, Duan Tiandu thought to himself. Probably the best thing would be to head north, to get away for a while. Hopefully that bastard of a Taoist and those 7 freaks have all died from their injuries. and then my uncle will get so angry that he passes away. Then I can return and get my position back. This is not a good dude. Once he made up his mind, he instructed the fishermen to start heading north. Even though Han Baoju's horse was faster, he was nevertheless searching on land, and thus let the two of them slip through. How can Han Baoju find them? He doesn't even know what they look like. What is he searching for? Duan Tiandu switched boats a couple more times as well and changed his clothes and forced Li Ping to change hers. After 10 days or so, he arrived in Yangzhou and decided to check into an inn. He was hoping to be able to settle down in the city for a while and wait out the storm. By an extraordinary coincidence, he just happened to overhear someone inquiring about his whereabouts. Shocked, he peeped through the little crack in the door and saw an amazingly ugly, short, and fat guy with a beautiful young girl. Both of them had a Jiaxing accent. He bought a travel easel and painting the stick that props it up. Oh, gotcha. That's cool. Guessing that they were some of the 7 freaks, he immediately grabbed Li Ping and ran out the back door. Luckily, the Yangzhou native at the front desk did not quite understand their dialect and didn't understand what they were asking about. This made it possible for Duan Tiandu to get away and rent another boat. Not daring to stop even for a second, he made his way north, up the Grand Canal, all the way to the shore of Li Guo Post, on the shores of Mount Wei Lake, inside the borders of Shandong Province. Li Ping, who was quite plain-looking and whose stomach was bulging by now, was spending days on end cursing and crying. So even though Duan Tiandu was by no means a gentleman, he never had any inclinations towards her. All the two ever did was fight and curse at each other. There wasn't a moment of peace between them. After several more days, that ugly dwarf and pretty girl showed up again. Duan Tiandu had hoped to hide in the back of their accommodations. Li Ping, knowing that her rescuers were near, began to shout at the top of her lungs. Duan Tiandu immediately stuffed a wad of cotton into her mouth and beat her. Li Ping struggled and shouted for all she was worth. Even though she wasn't successful in her attempt to get their attention, it was too much of a close call for Duan Tiandu. At first, Duan Tiandu brought Li Ping along, hoping to use her as a hostage, and thereby help him get out of a jam, should it ever come to that. But the situation had changed. Figuring that it would be much easier if he was by himself, and that this feisty woman was a disaster waiting to happen, he decided that it would be best to kill her. Once the Han cousins had left, he took out his sabers. His saber. Li Ping had been waiting the entire time for an opportunity to avenge her husband's death. However, she was tied up every night, making it impossible. Now, upon seeing the murderous look in his eyes, she prayed, "Xiao Ge, please, protect me, and allow me to kill this monster. Then I will join you." She reached into her shirt and placed her hands on the dagger that Chu Chu Chi gave her. She had hidden the dagger very well and was able to slip it past Duan Tiandu's search. Xiao Ge is an affectionate term used by Li Ping towards Guo Xiaotian. Ge means brother. Xiao, brother? With a chuckle, Duan Tiandu raised his saber and swung down at her. Prepared to die, Li Ping summoned all her strength, pointed the dagger at Duan Tiandu, and charged. Feeling a burst of murderous cold air upon his face, Duan Tiandu flicked his saber in an attempt to knock the dagger out of her hand. Unexpectedly, the dagger was so sharp that with a loud ping, it sliced the saber in half. Jesus, what kind of a dagger is this? The saber fell onto the floor as the tip of the dagger touched Duan Tiandu's chest. Shocked, Duan Tiandu instinctively jumped back. Nevertheless, the front of his shirt was slashed wide open. In complete shock and panic, he picked up the chair at his side and shouted, "Put that down in this instant, or else I'll kill you!" Li Ping was exhausted, and the baby in her belly was kicking non-stop. Not able to fight any longer, she fell onto the floor and tried to catch her breath. But she was still clutching the dagger tightly. Duan Tiandu was afraid that Han Baozhu would come around again. If he ran off by himself, he was afraid that Li Ping would reveal where he was going to those chasing him. So he immediately forced her onto another boat and went further north up the Grand Canal, passing Linqing, Dezhou, and arrived in Hebei province. Every time he set up camp, no matter how remote the location, before long there would be several men arriving to look for him. How are they this good? Eventually, the ugly gnome and the girl were joined by a staff-wielding blind man. Luckily, none of them recognized him, so he was able to escape every time. Soon, another troublesome thing happened. Li Ping suddenly began acting crazy. Every time they stopped somewhere, she would periodically begin shouting and screaming nonsense. Sometimes she would even start to tear and rip at her clothes and make all kinds of weird faces and gestures. At first, Duan Tiandu thought that she had really gone crazy, but after a few days he suddenly figured it out. As it turned out, she was afraid that her pursuers had lost them and was purposefully leaving a trail for them to follow. This was what was making it even harder for him to lose them. By now, the end of summer had passed, and the cool breezes began to blow. In order to avoid capture, Duan Tiandu went well up into the north country. The money he had taken with him was about to run out, yet the freaks were still close on his trail. Back in Hangzhou, I was important. I was somebody. Meat, wine, money, women. I had it all. But I had to get greedy and go to Ox Village and kill this bitch's hubby and get myself into this mess. He cursed himself. Hubby? Would he say that, this guy? Several times he was on the verge of leaving Li Ping and running off by himself, but each time he could not summon up enough courage to do it. Every attempt to kill her ended in failure as well. What? Is he this bad? He can't kill her? What was supposed to be protection had somehow turned into a curse that he could just not get rid of. On top of everything else, he had to be constantly on guard against her attempts to avenge her husband. He was frustrated, frightened, and angry, yet there was nothing he could do. I don't get it. He could tie her up, but he can't kill her? It's not computing in my mind, guys. Before he realized it, he had arrived at the capital of the Jin Empire, Yanjing. Duan Tiandu thought for a bit and decided to try and find an out-of-the-way place and finish off Li Ping. In such a huge and bustling city, there was no way those who were chasing him could find him. Happy that things were finally going to work out, he made his way towards the city. Unexpectedly, just as he arrived in the front of the gate to the city, a team of Jin soldiers came walking out from inside. Not even bothering to ask any questions, they seized both him and Li Ping, handed them each a carrying stick, and commanded them to carry cargo for them. Because Li Ping was short and a woman, her load was reasonably light. But Duan Tiandu was given two 50-kilogram loads, and they were practically forcing him to his knees. This group of soldiers followed an official as they headed north. As it turned out, that particular official was an emissary who was being sent out to present royal warrants from the Jin Emperor to the Mongolian subjects of the Jin Empire. The Jin soldiers that accompanied him were seizing any random Han Chinese that they ran into, forcing them to carry their heavy cargo and food supplies so as to save themselves from the labor. Duan Tiandu argued back a couple of times and was immediately answered by several stinging slashes to his head. This situation he had seen many times before, so it was all quite familiar to him. But before, he had been the one that was doing the whipping, not receiving it. By now, Li Ping's belly was huge, and doing all this heavy work was on the verge of killing her. However, so determined was she to get revenge that she tried her best not to let the Jin soldiers find out about her condition. Fortunately, she had been working on a farm ever since she was able to walk, and this made her strong and used to this kind of grinding work. Having basically resigned herself to death, she was barely able to manage the dozen of days they spent walking through the freezing and miserable steppe. Even though it was only October, being as far north as they were, a blizzard hit one day that not only brought snow, but also a sandstorm. Having nowhere to hide from the sand and the snow, the entire group, all 300 or so of them, lined up single file and continued to make their way through the endless grasslands of the steppe. Man, that sounds vicious. A sandstorm and a snowstorm? Suddenly, faint shouting could be heard approaching from the north. Through the sand-filled air, an army of countless horsemen came charging at them. Uh-oh, it's the Mongols, guys. Before any of them realized what was going on, the army had arrived. As it turned out, they were an army from some unknown tribe from the north that had just lost a battle. Chaos descended on the group as everyone tossed their weapons away and began running for their lives. Some of those who did not have horses were quickly trampled by those who had. The Jin soldiers, seeing that defeat was inevitable, immediately scattered. Li Ping was originally at Duan Tiande's side, but lost him during the chaos of the attack. She threw off her share of the cargo and ran as fast as she could in the direction where there seemed to be the least number of people. Luckily, everyone was so concerned with their own survival that nobody harmed her. What's up, Malik? Nice of you to join. After some running, her stomach began hurting intensely. Not able to go any further because of the pain, she lay down behind a sand dune and fainted. After what seemed like forever, she began to slowly come around. In the back of her mind, there seemed to be the crying noises of a baby. Not completely coherent, she still wasn't sure whether or not she was dead or alive. But the crying gradually got louder. She twitched and suddenly realized that there seemed to be a warm object between her legs. By now it was after midnight. The snow had just stopped, and the moon had finally appeared from behind the parting clouds. Damn, she just gave birth. She snapped wide awake and began to cry. In this impossible situation, the baby in her womb was born. She immediately sat up and took the baby in her hands. It was a boy. Overjoyed and crying, she used her teeth to bite off the umbilical cord. Badass. And hugged the baby as tightly as she could. In the moonlight, she saw that the infant's eyes were huge and bright and looked very much like her deceased husband, and his crying was incredibly loud. Under normal circumstances, there should have been no way that she was going to survive after giving birth in such harsh conditions, but upon seeing her child, she suddenly found strength that she didn't know she had, and she slowly got up on her knees and with one hand crawled into a small ditch close by to escape from the cold. Looking at the baby and thinking of her husband, bittersweet memories and emotions overwhelmed her. The two of them spent the night in that ditch. The next morning, hearing nothing around her, she summoned up enough courage to climb out of it. Amongst the white snow and yellow sands, the ground was covered with discarded weapons and corpses. Nobody alive was to be seen. She scrounged some preserved food from one of the dead soldiers, as well as a fire, making stone and knives. After carving some horse meat and cooking it, she searched around for some thicker clothing. She wrapped some around her baby and put some on herself as well. Luckily, the weather was so cold around this time of the year that nothing rots, so the horse meat was able to last her for a good few days, during which she was able to recover her strength. Then, carrying her baby, she began walking confidently towards the east. Even though she had lost the hated Duan Tiandu, all the hatred in her heart submerged and turned into love and tenderness. All she wanted was to protect her baby's face from the harsh steppe winds. After several more days, she noticed that the plant life around her was getting denser. This particular dusk, she suddenly spotted two horses galloping towards her. The riders noticed her and stopped to ask her what happened. Making wild gestures with her arms, she described her experience of meeting the defeated army and giving birth in the snow. These two riders were Mongolians. Even though even though they couldn't understand her at all, they, being the friendly and hospitable kind of people Mongolians were, felt sorry for her and invited her to spend the night with them in their Mongolian gur. I'm assuming a gur is like a hut. Gur. GERD. Acid reflux. Mongolian. Gerbil? Wait, what? Wait, hold on. Before we go there. Ah! So cute. Hey, Mongolian gerbil, how you doing? Oh, look at that. What if this shows up in our story? That'd be cool. Yeah. This is a gur. Mongolians were a nomadic group of people migrating along with their herds and the seasons. They lived in huge shelters called gurs that were easily put up and taken down. The next morning, this particular group of nomads departed, but they decided to leave her four small sheep to help her survive. They must be pretty small, living in a gerbil. Yeah, these Mongolians are tiny, tiny people. Not many people know this about Mongolians. After much suffering and labor, Li Ping settled down on the steppe. She erected a little hut using tree branches and reeds, and obtained food through barter using the sweaters she knitted from wool of the sheep. Damn! She's like a survivor. Time flew, and the little boy was soon 6 years old. Following the wishes of her former husband, Li Ping gave him the name of Guo Jing. The boy was rather slow and only began to speak at the age of 4. Luckily, he was a very strong boy and was able to herd the animals by himself. The two of them, mother and son, relied on each other, surviving on only the barest of essentials, and leading a very simple and happy life. Both of them had learned Mongolian, and only when they were alone with each other did they speak in the Linan dialect of Chinese. Seeing the manly face on her son and hearing him speaking everything in the Linan dialect of her home frequently made her feel a bittersweet sadness. Your father was a man amongst men in Shandong. You should by all means speak the Shandong dialect as well. But we weren't together a long enough time, and I couldn't learn it from him, so I can't teach you. It was October, and the weather was slowly becoming colder and colder. Guo Jing climbed onto his own little pony and set out, with a shepherd dog to herd the sheep. Around noon, a huge black eagle suddenly appeared in the sky and dove down towards the herd. Oh, I think he used the correct word here. Eagle, not condor. A particular young sheep was frightened and began to run for its life towards the east. Guo Jing shouted several times at it to make the sheep stop, but it just kept on going. Guo Jing immediately climbed onto his pony and went chasing after it. All right, so what do you guys think? He's a boy. Is the other kid a girl or a boy? What do you guys think? Don't spoil anything, those who know. After 4 or 5 li or so, he finally caught up to the little sheep. Just as he was about to head back, he suddenly heard a very loud and constant rumble. Startled, he could not figure out what the rumble was, even though he suspected that it might be thunder. The rumble got louder and louder until, after a while, he was able to detect the sounds of horses neighing and humans screaming within the rumbling. Having never heard of such things before, he was frightened and hurriedly led his little pony and the sheep into a clump of bush on top of a nearby hilltop. Sunny sighed. You think the other child is a girl? All right. Only then did he dare to stick his head out to see what was going on. What he saw was dust covering the sky as countless numbers of chariots rushed about. Several leaders were shouting out commands as the armies were lining up. One was to the east, while the other one was to the west, and both contained more people than Guo Jing thought there were in the whole world. Everyone was wearing a white-colored bandana on their heads. Some even stuck colorful feathers in them. By now, Guo Jing wasn't frightened anymore. He was too curious and excited. After another pause from the left, there suddenly came the sounds of horns and several rows of soldiers charged. They were led by a tall and thin-looking young man wearing a blood-red cape. He was holding his saber above his head, ready to strike at anyone he happened upon. The two armies clashed, and gruesome fighting ensued. The attacking side was outnumbered, and was slowly being overwhelmed and began to retreat. But reserves soon came in support, and the fighting escalated to a deafening level once again. It looked as if the attacking armies were about to collapse once again, when the 10 horns that had signaled the start of the battle suddenly came to life again, making the noise level even more deafening than it had been. The attacking soldiers shouted, "Temujin is here! The great Khan Temujin is here!" Even though the two armies were still fighting relentlessly, everyone's head periodically turned towards the east, where the horns were located. Who is Temujin, guys? Who's Temujin? Who knows? Following their gaze, Guo Jing looked towards the east as well. Through all the sand and dust that was filling the sky, he saw a group of riders galloping forth. A Genghis Khan cameo. True. Good job. So it's called... Okay. It's Genghis Khan, right? It's not Genghis Khan. Because when I was growing up, I always heard it Genghis Khan, but I think it's Genghis Khan. Let's see. Chinggis. Hold on. Pronunciation?
Genghis Khan.
I think you're wrong. Mm-hmm. Can I just use this? Let's do Chinese.
Chinggis Khan. Chinggis Khan.
It's Ch, right? Chinggis. Chinggis Khan. Chinggis. Alright, let's do one more. How to pronounce correctly? Okay, tell me.
The sun, the big hot thing we all want more of? We've got plenty in New Zealand. You are looking at Julian's pronunciation guide, where we look at how to pronounce, these names and more. Exist in English, and our one is Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan. But it is also correct to say it as Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan. But
Okay. Mongolian? Okay. Let's do Mongolian. Da, 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 da. Mongol script. Wait. Can I copy this? How does this work? All right. Mongolian. Doesn't know. In Mongolian. The cursor rotates. I know, that's pretty cool. It doesn't know. What is wrong with you? Google. What's going on? Okay, I think it's Chinggis. Chinggis. Anyways. Following their gaze, Guo Jing looked towards the east as well. Through all the sand and dust that was filling the sky, he saw a group of riders galloping forth. Within the group, there was a huge pole on which there were several white feathers. The cheering got louder as the riders got closer, and the attackers seemed to fight more and more fiercely. The formations of the defending army were torn apart instantly. The huge pole slowly moved towards the very hill that Guo Jing was hiding on. He retreated even deeper into the bush, but was still peeking out with his huge, bright pair of eyes. He noticed a very big and tall, middle-aged man in the midst of the riders who had ridden onto the hill. He was wearing an iron helmet on his head and had a brown tuft of beard on his chin. His eyes were beaming with energy and force. What Guo Jing didn't know was that he was the leader of the Mongolian tribe, Temujin. But even if he did know, he wouldn't have known what a Khan was. On his horse, Temujin, accompanied by several riders, calmly surveyed the battle that was occurring at the foot of the hill. After a while, the young man with the red cape rode up the hill. "Father, there are too many of them. Should we retreat a bit?" he shouted once he made up the hill. By now, Temujin had already finished surveying the battlefield. In a low voice, he commanded. All right, low voice. "Take your team and fall back to the east. Muchali, go with the second prince and fall back to the west. Bogerchi, you and Chia retreat to the north. Kublai, you and Subotai take your army and head south." Temujin continued, never taking his eyes off the battlefield. "When you see my banner raised up that high, that's my signal. Immediately sound the horns, turn around, and counterattack." All the officers rode off with their orders. Within seconds, the Mongol troops began retreating on all fronts. The enemy soldiers let out a great collective howl, and upon seeing Temujin's white feathered banner being raised high on the top of the hill, shouted in unison, "Capture Temujin! Capture Temujin!" Like ants, the opposing army began charging up the hill, completely ignoring the retreating Mongol troops. Horses and men charged with abandon. A yellow fog surrounded the hill from the dust they kicked up. Temujin stood at the top of the hill, not moving and resolute. A score of foot soldiers held up their shields and were protecting him from arrows flying from all directions. Temujin's sworn brother Kutuku and standout general Jelmi, along with 3,000 elite troops were defending the base of the hill with everything they could muster, determined to the last man. You remember watching a show about Mongolia, and some of the people talked about him, they used the ch pronunciation. Gotcha. But maybe that was another dimension. Maybe. Okay. I think it's ch. Amid the flashing of blades and spears, the cries of battle were shaking the earth. Witnessing this, Guo Jing was at the same time excited and scared. After an hour or so of intense fighting, and under the relentless charges of tens of thousands of enemy troops, Temujin's elite guard of 3,000 had suffered about 400 casualties, while cutting down more than 10,000 enemies. Looking out, Temujin saw that even though the battlefield was covered with enemy bodies and riderless horses running aimlessly, the number of enemy arrows flying in was still intense. On the northeastern end of the battle, the enemy attack was especially fierce, and the defense looked closer and closer to collapse. "Father," Ogedai, Temujin's third son, anxiously asked, "is it time to raise the banner?" "Their troops aren't tired yet," Temujin answered gravely, not moving his eyes away from the battle, even for a moment. By now, there were 3 black banners at the northeast end of the battle, indicating that the enemy had gathered 3 standout generals there to command the troops. The Mongol defenders were steadily dropping back. Up the hill came Jelme, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Khan! We can't hold them any longer!" "Can't hold them?" Temujin angrily shouted back. "What kind of a man are you?" Jelme's expression changed, and he grabbed a saber from one of the foot soldiers. With a shout, he charged into the enemy formation. Fighting with utter abandon, he carved a path of blood to the black banners. The enemy commanders, seeing his ferocity, immediately pulled hard on their reins and backed away. Jelme, with 3 swings of his saber, cut down the 3 men that were carrying the banners. Throwing down his saber, he wrapped his arms around the 3 banners, took them back up to the top of the hill, and stuck them into the ground upside down. Seeing this incredible display, the enemy's morale was rocked. The Mongol troops responded with fury, and the hole in the defense on the northeast end was quickly plugged. After more fighting, an enemy general with a black cape suddenly appeared in the southwest corner. Not wasting a shot, he quickly took down a dozen or so Mongol soldiers with his bow and arrows. 2 Mongol officers turned and charged at him with their spears. Using only 2 arrows, he easily shot the 2 officers off their horses. "Such amazing skill!" Even Temujin had to praise him after seeing that. By now, the general with the black cape had fought to near the foot of the hill. With the faint twang of a released bow, an arrow hit Temujin in his neck. Another arrow quickly followed, heading straight for Temujin's stomach. Realizing that he had been hit and another arrow was coming, Temujin immediately pulled hard on his reins. Is he gonna die, guys? Is he gonna die? Making his horse rear up on his hind legs. The arrow buried itself into the horse's chest, all the way to the feathers, knocking the horse to the ground. Oh, sacrificed his horse. Seeing the leader hit and falling, the Mongol troops were shocked. Screaming at the top of their lungs and pouncing on the opportunity, the enemy charged forward like floodwater. Alright, poor horse. Some nice bells for it. Well, I just said the horse was knocked to the ground. Maybe it didn't die. What's 1 arrow, guys? Ogedai had just finished helping his father pull out the arrow in his neck and was tearing off his shirt to bandage up the wound when Temujin shouted, "Forget about me! Defend the hill!" Nodding quickly, Ogedai turned and immediately shot down 2 enemy officers. Kutuku was commanding his troops guarding the west side of the hill, but because they had run out of arrows and spears, he had to retreat. Jiaomei's eyes turned red as he saw him. Kutuku, are you going to run like a scared rabbit? Who's running? Kutuku smiled back. I ran out of arrows. Temujin, still lying on the ground, took a handful of arrows and tossed them over to him. Kutuku quickly put an arrow onto his bow and shot the closest black-bannered general off his horse. Quickly charging downhill, Kutuku grabbed that general's horse and returned. Brother, you are really something, Temujin praised. Covered with blood from head to toe, Kutuku quietly asked, Can we raise the banner and sound the horns? The enemy still isn't tired yet. Just a bit longer. Temujin said, blood streaming down his palm that was pressing hard on the wound in his neck, trying to stop the bleeding. Upon hearing that, Kutuku dropped to one knee and begged, We owe our lives to you and have no reservations about dying here, but Khan, please, you have to take care of yourself. Temujin shakily stood up, took the reins of the horse from Kutuku, and struggled mightily before finally mounting the horse, waving his saber and shouting, Hold the hill! At the top of his lungs, he cut down 3 enemy soldiers that had charged up to the hill. Seeing Temujin reappear, the opposing armies' morale was shaken once again, and the momentum shifted, and they began to fall back down the hill. Raise the banners! Sound the horns! Temujin commanded, seizing on the fact that their enemy's morale was at a low. The Mongol army let out a collective howl as an officer climbed onto a horse, stood up, and raised the white feathered banner up as high as he could. The horns from all corners sounded. Immediately, the screaming of men drowned out the horns as row after row of Mongolian soldiers suddenly appeared from far away and approached with lightning speed. The enemy outnumbered the Mongols, but they were gathered around the hill. As soon as the soldiers on the outer edge began to fall back, the middle of their formation became chaotic. The general in black, noticing that the tide was turning, immediately began giving orders in hopes of rallying his troops. But the formation had already collapsed, and the soldiers had no desire to fight any longer. Within an hour, the army had been smashed into pieces. Those who weren't killed were running for their lives. The general in black, riding his black horse, turned and joined them. 50 taels of gold for the man that catches that scoundrel! Temujin shouted. This immediately sent several scores of Mongolian elites after him. The general in black, not missing a shot, turned and shot down about a dozen or so pursuers, one after the other. The rest of the pursuers did not dare to get too close, and in the end let him get away. Seeing all this from inside the bushes, Guo Jing was in awe of that general's bravery and skill. Wait, who is this general? Is it that one dude? Is it Wen Yan Honglia? That would be something, wouldn't it? The battle was a complete victory for Temujin, destroying more than half of his nemesis, the Tartars' army. Oh, never mind. Surveying the battlefield, Temujin's memories of his past flashed before his eyes again. The poisoning of his father, being captured by the Taijuts, and all the torture and shame he went through at their hands. Although his mental wounds were still not healed, his joyful heart was filled with the sweet taste of revenge. Unable to hold it in any longer, he leaned back and laughed in triumph. Every soldier joined in with cheers which shook the earth as they began to organize into formations and leave the battlefield. Guo Jing waited until even the grave diggers had left due to darkness before he came crawling out of the bush. It was midnight when he got home, and his mother, who was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, waiting for him to come back, was overjoyed to see him. Guo Jing described what had happened to his mom as best as he could. Li Ping, seeing his face alight with joy and amazement, and without a trace of fear, thought to herself that even though he was just a kid and a bit dumb, he was still very much like his father in this respect. Bittersweet feelings filled her heart. Okay. I think we're good. We're good? We good? How was the chapter, guys? Oh, didn't finish my soda. Wenyan Honglia is Jurchen, not Mongolian. Yeah, I know. I didn't know who they were fighting. Apparently the Tartars. Did she call her own child dumb? She did it twice. All right. Okay, now we have a time skip. All right. So it looks like the story is about these two kids, Guo Jing and the other one. Dumber characters would have joined the battle. He's just a kid. The boy needs a tutor? Ah. He will get his tutor or tutors. All right. Yeah. Did you guys think that that Genghis Khan was going to be in the story? He's going to play a role in this story? Did you think that? Yeah, we're going to see a lot more of him later. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. I have a headache, so I think I'm going to go and take a nap. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. I'm not going to drink wine today. I just drink this. Cheers. Cow piss. All right, guys. Tune in next time to see what happens with Guo Jing. I love you. And thanks for joining. All right. Bye.